Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing a 5-star predictions video. I always really like watching these videos from other people. It's really fun to see what they think that they're going to just absolutely love, and then when they come back later on and see whether or not they were correct or not. So I thought I would give one a try. These are all books that I plan to get to in the next couple months. Whether or not I will is a different story, but most likely I will be reading all of them in 2022, and so then I can look back on this video and see whether or not I was correct. I'm going to start with series that I've already read books in because I feel like that gives you different perspective as to whether or not you are going to really enjoy a book. If you've already gotten into the world or the characters or whatever, it is easier to predict whether or not you will enjoy the follow-ups, right? So I'm going to start with series that I've already started that I think are going to just blow me away. So the first book I'm predicting to be a 5-star read is Howling Dark by Christopher Ruocchio. I finished Empire of Silence last month and I really enjoyed it. It was not a 5-star read for me though. It was a 4-star. It was trending maybe towards like a 4.5, but the issues that I had with Empire of Silence is mostly just that it felt a little disjointed and very much like different phases of his life were dealt with in different parts of the book. I had no real problem with anything. It was just that it didn't feel like a cohesive whole, and there wasn't any like crazy plot things happening. It was more so just him trying to get his life together and figuring out what was going on. And so Howling Dark is the second book. I hear that people really like Howling Dark and that it's filled with crazy plot revelations. I've heard that Ruoccio's prose improves, which it was already fantastic in Empire of Silence. So yeah, I think that Howling Dark is just going to hit all my boxes. After that, we have The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie, the second standalone book in the First Law universe. So I haven't read Best Served Cold yet, but I don't anticipate Best Served Cold to be a 5-star read. I'm sure that I will like it, but some people whose opinions that I tend to line up with fairly often, like Jake Bishop and Bookborn, they didn't really like Best Served Cold, and the plot doesn't really interest me as much as some of the other First Law books, so I'm anticipating Best Served Cold to be like a 3.5 or a 4-star read, but maybe it'll surprise me. But that being said, I think The Heroes, I'm fully anticipating a 5-star read. I've been spoiled slightly about some of the characters that appear in The Heroes, and the concept of the book just sounds really interesting to me to get both sides of a siege, and I love sieges in general. I know some people think they're boring, but there's just so many rife conflicts going on in a siege if it's explored well. And I think people falsely focus on arbitrary distinctions in books that don't tend to matter to everybody. Like, so some people I know are afraid to start this book because they don't like battle sequences, and they're like, oh, the whole book is a giant battle. And then I know some people who don't like battles that much that ended up completely loving this book, like Sarah from Sarah Reads, really liked The Heroes, and I'm pretty sure she said before that she doesn't really like battle sequences. So I think that's not something that's going to really tell whether or not you like this book, but I guess we'll see. But I kind of like the slow, contemplative aspect of war and how it affects people, and I'm sure that there will be, exciting action sequences and stuff too. So yeah, The Heroes, I'm hoping for a 5-star read with this one. The next book that I think will be 5 stars is Speaking Bones by Ken Liu, the last book in the Dandelion Dynasty. First of all, I just want to say I love this cover. This is a fantastic cover. I think it is so nice. This is an arc that I got from Ken Liu himself, so thank you so much for that, Ken. I will be buddy reading this with Bookborn in April, and I have loved the series so far. Wall of Storms, the second book in the series, is one of my all-time favorite books. The Veiled Throne was the first half of what was originally one book, which Speaking Bones is the second half of, and because of that I gave The Veiled Throne 4 stars because it very much did feel like half of a book. And so because it's been half of a book, this is essentially, in my mind, this is going to be 1,000 pages of climax to an incredible series. And so I will be shocked if I do not think this is a 5-star read. I would just be absolutely shocked. Ken Liu has earned my trust with this series, with his short stories, and with his pure intelligence and character writing and world building and conflict build-up, and so I can't wait to get into this one. The next book I don't have a physical copy of, but that will be Ship of Magic, the first book in the Live Ship Trader series. Everything I hear about this series makes me think that I'm going to really enjoy it. It's multiple POV, the world gets opened up more from Farseer. You get really interesting characters. It's more of like a slower paced, character driven novel, It takes place on boats. Like, everything about this sounds really cool to me. I'm halfway through Assassin's Quest at the time of filming this video, but by the time it's released, I will probably have already finished Assassin's Quest, and I've really enjoyed Farseer. I don't think it's one of my favorite series ever made, but especially Royal Assassin, I thought was fantastic, but I'm anticipating really loving Live Ship Traders, so I hope that's the case. The next book I also don't have a physical copy for, but that will be Spirit of Vengeance by Rob J. Hayes. It is the third book in the Mortal Techniques world, but they're kind of a loose trilogy. They aren't direct sequels to each other. I think you can read any of them in any order, but people have told me that Spirit of Vengeance is best if you've already read the first two books, Never Die and Pawn's Gambit, both of which I have read and given 4.5 and 5 stars to. I think Rob J. Hayes has a great world here. He writes really great action sequences and fun plots. He does great twists. And from everything that I've heard, this book is just the next level on that. It's also way longer, which Never Die and Pawn's Gambit are both like 300 pages, and Spirit of Vengeance is like 500. But because I already have trust in Rob J. Hayes, I'm anticipating that I'm just going to appreciate the extra length instead of wish it was shorter, and then I'm just going to love this book. So hopefully I'm right. The final book that's in a series that I've already started that I anticipate giving 5 stars to is Kingdom of Heaven by Richard Nell. I read Kingdom of Paradise in 2021, and I really liked it. I thought it was a great self-published grimdark book. I really liked the character of Ruka, and Kale I thought was also really good. The two cultures in this series are super interesting. One is kind of like Norse inspired, but it's a matriarchy instead of a patriarchy, and the other main culture is kind of based on like Southeast Asian, like Pacific Island cultures. The reason I'm choosing the third book, Kings of Heaven, instead of the second book, Kings of Ash, as a 5-star prediction is because, from what I understand, Kings of Ash is mostly a flashback of some stuff that happened near the end of Kings of Paradise, and so I imagine there'll be a lot of gap filling in, and then it'll set up for a very epic conclusion in the third book. So I'm anticipating that I'm correct, and that I really like the third book in this series, because the first book had me very invested. That's it for the series that I've already started. For some other books that aren't series that I'm anticipating giving 5 stars to, the first is Boy's Life by Robert McCammon. I have heard great things about Robert McCammon for years. Every time I mention something to a McCammon fan about Loving the Stand, they're like, you gotta try Swan Song. They Thirst is a book I also want to try. There's a few other ones, Wolf's Hour. But a few friends of mine, Baron from Your Brain on Books, and Sarah from Sarah Reads, absolutely love this book. They said that it reminded them of all the best parts of Stephen King's books, and we tend to agree mostly on what we like about Stephen King, and so I'm really excited. They sold me on it. I'm going to try to read Boy's Life in April, and I'm anticipating giving that one 5 stars. The next book is actually kind of a cheat because I started this book a while ago and I put it down, and that is Behave, The Biology of Humans at Our Best and Worst by Robert Sapolsky. Robert Sapolsky is maybe the nonfiction author that I respect and like the most, even without having read any of his books. I have listened to Robert Sapolsky on podcasts. I've read about him in articles. I have watched some of his YouTube lectures. I really like Robert Sapolsky, and I own all of his books, and I've never read any of his books. He is a neuroendocrinologist, I believe. I don't remember exactly what his qualifications are, but essentially he's a neuroscientist and a biologist, and he studies both aspects of this part of human nature, and everybody says this is his like magnum opus. He spent a really long time writing this book. He has other books that are about like stress, or he also was really fascinating where he went to Kenya every summer for like 20 years and he watched this like baboon troop over time, and so he has a book about a primate's life, and that one I also really want to read. He just seems like a guy that I'm going to really like. And I was taking neuroscience last semester, and I picked up this book on audio because I just wanted something to kind of refresh myself on some of the concepts while I was also studying. It would be like a different way to study. And then I finished my course, did well in it, by the way, thank you for asking. And then afterwards, I was just like really done with all things like neuroscience-y and biology based for a little bit. So I had gotten like maybe 100, 120 pages into it, and I just needed to put it down for a while and take a break. And it had nothing to do with the book itself. So I'm going to come back to this book. I'm sure that I'm going to love it. I'm going to recommend it to everybody. It really dives deep into human behavior, which is something that I find fascinating, and why we make the things that we do. Robert Sapolsky is filled with these interesting tidbits about human nature, like if you are standing near smelly garbage, you are more likely to think conservatively about an issue than if you were standing away from the garbage. Just random things like that. And this book does really go into all of the little like intricacies of human behavior. I will say, though, that the first 2 chapters especially were pretty dense in terms of laying groundwork for like the science behind stuff. So if you are just really not interested in reading nonfiction that's more technical, this might not be the book for you. But I will say, from what I read, after the first 2 chapters, it does get more readable and less complex. He just kind of has to lay some groundwork so that he doesn't have to keep explaining things throughout the book. But yeah, 5 stars, I bet. In a similar vein to that book, the next book I think I'm going to give 5 stars to is Homo Deus by Yuval Noah Harari. This is by the author who did Sapiens, and he also did 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, both of which I absolutely loved, given an emphatic 5 stars to. I think Yuval is one of the greatest thinkers that I've come across. I know some people think that he does take like bigger leaps than are necessary, but I find some of the value in his work to be what he makes me consider that I've never considered before. It's not that I think that Yuval Noah Harari is a prophet that is going to get everything right, and I'm sure he also doesn't think that either. His goal is to make you think about things that you have never thought about, and Sapiens and 21 Lessons for the 21st Century both highly accomplished that for me, and Homo Deus is about the future of humanity and where we're going to be going, and so I anticipate giving this 5 stars as well for making me think about all sorts of stuff that I never considered. And a fantasy standalone that I'll be reading soon that I anticipate giving 5 stars to is Tagana by Guy Gavriel Kay. I have not yet read a Guy Gavriel Kay book, even though he's actually from my city. I see his books everywhere. It shames me that I've not read any of his books, but I own like 5 or 6 of them, and I've always wanted to try Tagana and a couple of the other ones, like Under Heaven, really badly. And there is a read-along in Sarah's Discord, and so I'm finally going to give this one a chance. I've heard nothing but great things about this book. Even people who tend to not like Guy Gavriel Kay say that Tagana is really good, and that his prose is just beautiful, and so I'm anticipating giving this one a full 5 stars as well. Alright, that was my 5-star predictions. I look forward to coming back to this later on and seeing if I was right. Can you imagine if I look back on this video in like 6 months and I gave 5 stars to every one of these books? Like, how great would that be? I would just be like hitting a perfect average. But that probably won't happen. I'm sure at least one of these books will disappoint me, just law of averages, but I hope that I'm right. I hope these are just books that knock it absolutely out of the park for me. Thank you so much for watching. I want to know what your thoughts are on these books. Have you read any of the books that I mentioned? Are you interested in checking out any of them? What are some of the books that you're going to read in the next couple months that you think you're going to give 5 stars to? Let me know down in the comments, and once again, thank you so much for watching the video. It's never goodbye, it's just till next time. Take it easy, everybody.